Hi there. Have you experienced adrenaline rushes where suddenly you have this knot in your stomach, your heart is beating really fast, you're breathing fast, you feel jittery, maybe sweaty, and you wonder what to do? Well, this episode is for you. We're going to go over three things in particular. We are going to look at what these are. What are adrenaline rushes? We're going to look at how not to meet them, and we're going to look at three ways to meet them that I think are really helpful. And just real quick background, it was actually a client of mine who yesterday sent me a message within bedtime within the app, and he asked me to review an article. And when I was reading this article, I was like, wow. Part of this article was like, this is spot on, this is so good, and then other parts were like, oh no, this is not helpful at all. And I thought I would really like to share it. I think it can be really helpful. And part of the article is actually specifically about like adrenaline rushes at night that make it tricky to sleep, etc. So before we get into this, very quick announcement here, which is that if you are thinking about becoming a sleep coach, well, this is the time. This is the time of the year when I always announce, always say that you're welcome to apply. So we have had two very strong applicants, but we have 4 slots, so there's still availability. You can head over to the Sleep Coach School and check out the banner up top, and we start February 15th. All right, so with that said, before we actually go to the article that I want to share and review, just want you to keep this in mind. When someone says don't think about a pink elephant, you think about, of course, pink elephant, right? Or when you try not to laugh at a funeral, well, of course, like those bubbles inside you, they cannot stop because you're not supposed to laugh, right? You try to stop an emotion, it just grows, right? If you try to stop a thought, then that's exactly what you're going to be thinking about. And very briefly, that's because the brain has a message, and when we don't want to hear the message, the brain goes like, oh, you got to hear this message, right? So that's why that happens. So keep that in mind as we go into this article and take a look at it. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we are going to pretty much go through the entire article. I think there's so much in it that I thought was helpful. So this is from Healthline, adrenaline rushes. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. So the title is Adrenaline Rush, Everything You Should Know. And by the way, to the author here, I think there's lots of this that I really liked, and I think it was well researched and everything. But anyway, I had some thoughts that I hope will be helpful for everyone. Okay, what is adrenaline? Is the first title here. Adrenaline, also called epinephrine, is a hormone released by your adrenaline glands and some neurons. And then it goes to say that the adrenal glands are located top of each kidney, what they're responsible for, etc. We don't need to go over this, but I do want to point out right off the bat in the first section of this article, it says adrenaline is also known as a fight or flight hormone. It is released in response to a stressful, exciting, dangerous, or threatening situation. And right there, we have a little bit of I would say a little bit of a tricky thing here, because whether a situation is dangerous or not, it depends on how you interpret it. If somebody has never seen a tiger before and they thought, oh, what a nice, cute cat, they will not, their body will not release adrenaline because they don't interpret that situation as dangerous. And and you will see this repeated in this article, that it is actually our thoughts and our interpretation that matters. The situation itself, not so much in terms of like whether adrenaline will be released or not. Well, then it goes on to say adrenaline helps your body to react more quickly, etc. Very cool. Now, second headline, what happens in the body when you experience a rush of adrenaline? I thought this was really well written. An adrenaline rush begins in the brain. And here we see when you perceive a dangerous and stressful situation. You see, it's kind of subtle, but it makes a big difference, because here the author points out that it's actually our thoughts, our perception, our idea that determine whether it is released or not the situation itself. So going back here, when you perceive a dangerous or stressful situation, that information is sent to part of the brain called the amygdala. This area of the brain plays a role in emotional processing. If danger is perceived by the amygdala, again, this beautiful language, which is so helpful. If danger is perceived by the amygdala, it sends a signal to another region of the brain called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the command center, and it transmits a signal through the autonomic nervous system to the adrenal medulla, etc. And once in the bloodstream, the adrenaline binds to receptors in the liver to break down larger sugar molecules, giving your muscles a boost of energy. It binds to receptors in muscle cells. It causes their lungs to beat faster, stimulates the cells of the heart to beat faster. It's quite amazing, that this one hormone can have all these effects that kind of work together to make us really ready for any threat. Right? It's just fascinating how the body works. And the final part of this section says the rush of adrenaline is what gives you the ability to dodge out of the way of an oncoming car before you've had a chance to even think about it, which is also really, really helpful, phrasing here. Sometimes there are thoughts exist and an interpretation of the environment exists in our brain before it becomes, before we become conscious of it, really, right? So, and this explains why sometimes you can have a sudden, your heart can start beating fast, you can start breathing fast, you can feel that this is happening, but you're not fully conscious of it, you don't really understand what's happening, which can be a really confusing situation, but this is explained really nicely here. All right, activities that cause adrenaline rush is the next chapter, and again we see that it's not the activities that cause adrenaline rush, it's our interpretation, how we think about it. The author is mentioning like watching horror movies, skydiving. Like if somebody has been skydiving their whole life, maybe they're super bored when they're skydiving. Who knows? It's not the situation. It is how we think about it that matters. Now, this part I thought was really helpful to go over. What are the symptoms of an adrenaline rush? I think a lot of people here in the community will relate. Rapid heart rate, sweating, heightened senses. I can hear everything. I can hear a pin drop. I'm aware of everything that's happening, right? Rapid breathing, decreased ability to feel pain, increased strength and performance, dilated pupils. A lot of people have asked that in the channel. Like I noticed my pupils are large, feeling jittery or nervous, and often that dilated pupils is often like somebody's concerned that they have some neurological condition. Again, nothing is medical advice, but just pointing this out. Feeling jittery or nervous, jerky, right? Hypnic jerks, right? You can see how these are, all these, well, maybe not increased strength and performance or decreased ability to feel pain. Those are not so common, but all the others, very, very, very common topics here on the channel. All right, so let's continue reading on. So the next chapter is actually adrenaline rush at night. I thought there was some really, really nice things here. While the fight or flight response is very useful when it comes to avoiding a car accident or running away from a dog, it can be a problem when it's activated in response to everyday stress. I would say that the activation itself is just something that happens. There's some deeper misunderstanding that is helpful to know about. When we just think like, oh, this shouldn't be happening, right? I shouldn't have an adrenaline rush now. This is wrong. Then we're in the territory of like not fully understanding what's happening and just kind of fighting an emotion again. But of course, it is true that oftentimes an adrenaline rush happens because there's some misunderstanding in the brain. The adrenaline rush itself is not wrong. It's just released because of a misunderstanding. With insomnia, it's that being awake is dangerous. I shouldn't be awake. This is a danger supposed to happen, and then we have this adrenaline rush, and there's just that misunderstanding. But the response itself is not wrong in that sense, just a misunderstanding. And it says here, this is especially true at night when you lie in bed in a quiet, dark room. Some people can't stop focusing about a conflict that happened during the day or worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. And here we see we're in this territory of like partly this is very true, partly it's a little problematic, I think. Yes, it's true that when we're in a dark and quiet room, everybody else is sleeping, our thoughts can come to us much clearer. And then, that can lead us to worry, of course, and then there can be an adrenaline rush. But some people can't stop focusing is not, that statement I don't think is helpful because nobody has voluntary control over their thoughts. It's not like some people can stop focusing, some people can't stop focusing. In reality, we for all of us, we just have these flow of thoughts that we have no control over. But some of us can get this idea that I shouldn't have this thought and start to suppress the thought. And here's where we go back to in the beginning of this episode. We say like, if you read this and say like, oh, some people can't stop focusing. I can't stop focusing about something. I have to be able to stop focusing on something. Now we're trying to suppress a thought, which makes that thought come back more and more, right? So that was a little tricky thing here. But the next sentence is so beautiful. While your brain perceives this as a threat, as a stress, real danger isn't actually present. I mean, this is what I talk about all the time with perceived threats, right? And this author is pointing out that at night you worry about something and there's this adrenaline rush, but there's actually no real threat. There's just a confusion there. But you can see that when the brain perceives something as a stress, it is not wrong for the brain to release adrenaline. It's just doing what it's supposed to do, right? It's just a misunderstanding again. All right. Adrenaline may also be released as a response to loud noises, bright lights, and high temperatures. Again, maybe there can be a little adrenaline just from the loud noise itself. It'd be like, "What's that?" But it's gonna, that's gonna fade away by itself very quickly unless we think that the loud noise is a threat. If there's a loud noise and that was annoying, and then we fall back to sleep, no problem, right? It becomes very self-limiting. But if it's like there's loud noise, oh no, now I can't sleep. Now the threat is here. Now it becomes more of a real rush. So again, the thoughts are what matter, not what actually happens in circumstances. Now we get to the part where, so now we talked about like what is adrenaline. We've covered kind of number one, and now we go to how not to respond. And this is where the article becomes like quite tricky. So first of all, we have the next headline here, which is how to control adrenaline. Like that immediately, like when I read this, I was like, oof, oh my goodness. The idea that we can control adrenaline, that to me just immediately gets me like really nervous, because I see people reading this and going like, I got to control my adrenaline. And of course, again, going back to the beginning of this video, when we try to suppress emotions, suppress thoughts, they come back stronger, right? So, we read here, it's important to learn techniques to counter your body's stress response. That whole sentence to me is like so triggering, because somebody who tries to find a technique to counter your body's stress response is going to have more of that stress response, right? And then there's, as you are probably not surprised to find, there is a list of like, try the following: deep breathing exercises, meditation, yoga or tai chi, talk to friends, eat a balanced, healthy diet. And you can see how when somebody tries these things to control their adrenaline rush, there's going to be a lot of problems. There's going to be a lot of struggles, because the adrenaline rush comes from the thoughts. When we try to control our thoughts, the brain goes like, no, you got to hear this thought. We have this conflict, and we have more and more struggle. And when to see a doctor, again, nothing is medical advice. Anyone concerned about your health, of course, talk to your doctor. But as usual, it's kind of like in the sleep world. Go first, try to start sleep hygiene. Oh no, that didn't work. Now go see your doctor. But again, if there's not the understanding of what an adrenaline rush is, then nothing we do to stop it. If we like, oh, take this medication to stop the adrenaline rush, it's just the same thing again. It's just again trying to prevent thoughts from happening, and then they become stronger. So now I think we've covered number one. We've learned what these rushes are. We also talked about how not to meet them. And to summarize the part of like how not to meet them, I would say anything you do to like stop thoughts, stop the feeling, that is not the helpful way. So cool. We talked about number one. We talked about number two, and then let's talk about the three ways to meet them that I think can truly help. So what are those? Well, number one is education, just like this. Like you understand what an adrenaline rush now is, and you understand how not to meet them. I mean, just understanding how the mind works, I think is so foundational, so fundamental. Often education is all you need. The rest kind of just falls into place when you understand how the mind works. Now, number two is courage. And that often comes from education, when we understand that, oh, like she said in the article, there is no actual threat. The palpitations, the breathing fast, these are just like my body, the manifestations in my body of fear, which comes from how I think. And we see that you can go the route of courage, which is like, instead of trying to like stop it, then I'm being willing to experience the discomfort. It's not pleasant to find this, to have this hearting beat, to feel the stress in your body. It's not pleasant. But when you find the courage to be willing to experience that, you're already kind of listening to your brain instead of trying to shut it off. And that is super helpful. And number three is kindness. And this is so, if you see from education that, there's no real threat, and you say number two, I'm going to be willing to experience discomfort. Well, sometimes that's going to be hard. Sometimes you're going to try to run away and hide and try to stop the thoughts, etc. And at those times, just deploy some kindness. It's so natural. And when you're not hard on yourself for at that moment not going the route of courage, but going the route of, like, self-care and self-love, nothing, no problem with that. So again, education, courage, and kindness, I think, are so helpful. And final note here, I know this will become a longer episode than I expected, but I just kind of want to comment on the fact that these type of articles they're so tricky, because there are parts of them are like, this is spot on, and then parts they're like, oh, I don't know about that, and parts they're like, oh no, this is going to lead people in that direction, right? So a little bit tricky there, but hopefully, as we live in this kind of connected world where we all can, like, learn from each other, so I hope we will all find a way to teach ourselves, learn about ourselves, so we all find life more peaceful and more enjoyable, etc. So as always, let me know what you thought about this in the comment section. Look forward to interacting with you. And with that said, take it easy, have a nice day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.